Welcome to PitchTalk Unfiltered, where we feel it's the ultimate podcast for aspiring football stars looking to make their mark on the professional stage. Hi, I'm Nick Prassopoulos. I'm co-host. I'm a football agent with over 15 years experience covering this beautiful game at international level. My co-host is Andrea Pregoni, current professional footballer, having played the beautiful game across Italy, Portugal, Spain, and the US. So each week, we're going to bring you candid interviews with current and former footballers who have been in your shoes and have successfully made the transition to the professional arena. You'll hear their stories, their struggles, their triumphs, which basically offers a real life perspective that you won't find in any playbook. But, you know, that's not all. We'll shed light on the crucial aspects you need to watch out for when dealing with clubs, with club scouts, with player agents, from understanding contracts and spotting red flags to making the right decisions for your career and financial future. We're going to delve deep into the role of agents, and they're the gatekeepers who can make or break your career. How to choose the right one, what questions you should ask, and most importantly, how to protect yourself from those looking to exploit your talent for their financial gain. And that's a very crucial thing that we're going to be talking about today. So let's get ready to step off the pitch and into the boardroom, as we say, as we're going to equip you with the tools and insights you need to navigate the business side of football. So, Andrea, welcome to our third podcast. I guess the first and most important insight is along your experience in the game over the last 10 years. So let's maybe start on when you first experienced the business side of football and just briefly explain what exactly that scenario was.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me as always. It's always a pleasure. Yeah, I mean, in regards for my first kind of exposure to the business side was when I first moved here in the US. I was 16, and I was coming from the European system. So I played from when I was 4 years old to 15, 16 in Italy in the Italian system. So when I moved out here, I saw that to play in academies, you had to pay a big fee, you know, and they're not cheap. And I saw that was my first kind of shock, because it's one thing if you have to pay for your uniforms, you know, you have a little fee, but these fees were in the thousands. And I was shocked because, you know, there was many families that couldn't pay. And, you know, that was kind of my first thought, like, why, if you want a player or a kid can't pay to play on academy, like, you know, why is that possible, you know, because not everybody could have paid those fees. And that was kind of my first shock, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So
um,
how old were you?
I was 16.
16. So, you know, and again, I see this in a lot of young kids, is that, you know, when clubs are interested in a young kid, the young kid, and you know, thinks, and rightly so, that they're good at they're a good footballer. So why pay to play? Now, it's not just in the US. You know, coming to any academy in Europe will be the same. You know, as you well know, we've experienced it in Italy. Is this, do you think, where the game is currently at? To get into academy, you have to obviously show the money, show where the money is.
I
Yeah.
mean, you know, I think over the years, as we all know, the football industry just shifted. The whole world did, just towards the money side now. So I think money just became more powerful. And, you know, it still happens. And the thing is, as we mentioned in the previous podcast, there's not enough exposure, there's not enough attention in the lower leagues in the professional pyramid. So in Premier League, in you know, championship divisions, you might not see, if something bad happens, a scam,
Mm.
or a director with money gets something, it's going to be something big. It's going to be on all the newspapers. Your image is going to be ruined. But there's not that media attention in the lower divisions, in academies and lower academies for the youth. And
So
so
they can get
a
away
lot
with
of
it, basically. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of sketchy things happen. You know, I think this is a big problem, because with that media attention just focusing in the first divisions, you know, the lower pyramid is just becoming just a mess. You know, and I saw with my own eyes. I saw my teammates at a young age falling into scams. And it's sad to see because you know, that first division is only less than 1%. There's
mm, mm,
football is even the lower divisions. It's not just the Premier Leagues. You
mm,
know,
mm,
football is even the local teams, the local youth teams. That's football too, and there's just not enough attention. So a lot of shady things happen, and it's sad because now with today's technology, the scams are just getting even more and more and more.
mm,
And it's a shock. But I think as a player, I didn't have a mentor that warned me about these scams, so I had to learn all by myself.
mm, mm.
And till this day, it's even hard for me to distinguish what's a real agent or what's a fake one. I see directors how they work with my own eyes, and so it's definitely not getting better at all.
Yeah, so I'd like to maybe give an example of a player out of Canada who was approached by people that call themselves agents that had direct contact with a club in Italy. They said that they liked what they saw in his highlight reel. They said that they would like for him to come immediately to Italy, to go immediately to Italy because everything was sorted. When he approached me and said, this is what's happened, I guess the first red flag that I saw is when I asked him whether he had been shown a contract or a letter of offer, and he hadn't. Now, for anyone watching this podcast, we should say that if you want to find out whether something is genuine or not, then they need to give you something that's at least contractual, whether that's a letter of offer or whether that's an actual contract. Now, when I said to him, "Look, the best thing for you to do is to go back to these people and say, can I review the contract?" Because they were expecting him to fly across to Italy. And here's the kicker, is that they said for the privilege of doing that he had to pay them €3,000. Now, that is automatically a red flag. When somebody asks you to pay them a fee for a potential trial or a possible position at a club, I can understand that a player would be thinking, "Oh, this is my opportunity." But they will fall deep into the crevasse if they don't ask the right questions. And the first question to ask is, can I have a letter of offer from the club, signed by the club, or a contract? Now, you can say with the latest technology, if you have said, anyone can get a logo from the internet, put it
Correct,
on put it
correct.
in a Word document, create something, and then go, here we go, here's the letter of offer. Now, what I would suggest to any young player who gets approached by somebody to say that we have an opportunity is to do some background checks on these people. Now,
Exactly.
Google is amazing. Any other
Yeah.
search engine is amazing to say, who is Andrea Pregoni? Who is Nick Prassopoulos? Who are these people?
Yes.
And if they're legitimate, they will come up as being legitimate. So just to close this example, I said to him, tell me the name of these people. And I'll help you because this person wasn't that savvy in that area. The minute I typed in one of the names, it came up from Albania, right? So it had nothing to do with, and now I'm not being targeting any specific country. I'm just saying is that it
Of
came up
course.
and
It wasn't.
there was no connection to football.
Mhm.
So imagine if he had wired €3,000 to these people, he would not see them again. Or imagine he packed up his family and flew to Italy, went to the club, and the club said, "We don't know who you are.
No,
There's no
it's
opportunity."
yeah. Honestly, it's unacceptable because one, you're playing with a child's dream. Already from that is a low standard. And it's not just the child, it's the family too. A lot of my teammates that they fell into scams, it's a sacrifice for the families even to give them the
Yeah,
money to, 3,000 just from what you told me. I mean, that's a
that's a
big
lot.
amount
That's a lot of
for a
money.
child. So, I mean, for my advice as well in regards for trials, like you did say, the background check is very important.
Mm,
And another thing that a lot of players do not ask is, first of all, never be afraid task, you know.
Ah, 100%.
But second is you have to know how many foreigner spots are available. You know, because a lot of players they travel, and I saw with my own eyes, they travel literally across the other side of the world, and there's no foreigner spots left. You
Mm.
know, and they just went there, trialed, and they're like, "You're a good player, but we don't have no more spots." You know, so
Mm.
always make sure there's if you're a foreigner in that country, you don't have the passport. Make sure that there's available spots as a foreigner.
That's a very good point. Very good point.
Then I would also like, and it happened to me in the past where I went to clubs that they were interested. They loved me as a player, but they already had 9 defenders signed, 8 defenders signed.
Mm.
So you always have to make sure, do they need my position? How many players are signed as a center back? How many players
Mm.
are signed as a fullback? You know, you have to make sure. And if he doesn't know, you research it. You know, there's websites, transfer market. You have to be sure to know that there's available spots in your position, because
Mm.
if you're a center back and there's 6 center backs signed on the roster, well, you know, you're not. What's your purpose there? You know,
That's right.
so you have to make sure that there's spots as well open for your position. And
Mm.
then I always ask, does the coach know me? Because a lot of times you go on a trial and the coach doesn't even know you're there. So be sure that the coach at least saw your highlight video or he knows about you. You know,
Mm.
because if a coach doesn't even know that you're coming, his trainings are not planned for you to showcase. You know, his drills are focused on the starters or the players already signed. So always be sure that at least as coach and assistant coach, someone in the coaching staff knows that you're there or you're going.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
and that's very important.
Mm. So, although it boosts your self-esteem when somebody comes calling, somebody comes chasing you, the important thing is not to jump headfirst into the shallow end of the pool, so to
Oh
speak.
no.
So, having some research that you need to obviously dive into, not just from the agent or the scout that's contacted you, but also the club and the positions. Obviously, the foreign play if you're going to play in another country. I think that's very important.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I wanted to raise, and because it is a billion-dollar industry, the one point that a lot of agents that I've spoken to who have not known that I myself am an
Correct.
agent have said that it's just standard practice that, you know, if you're going to put your son into a football club that's, you know, he could potentially make, you know, $3-4 million a year. So paying 2 or 3 thousand euro now is not an issue. Again, that's how they catch you, because
I
they try and convince you that you're going to make it when they can't even um,
no.
confirm that.
Yeah.
Um, the other thing I want to ask you, Andrea, with your experience, that if somebody approaches you or approaches a young kid or approaches the parents of a young kid and say that, you know, we have a club that's interested. Would you recommend that the pet or the family does research on the club, maybe even calls the club direct, just to confirm that? What are your thoughts on that? Or would you put your trust in the agent, maybe do some research on the agent?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Based on my experience, when there was an agent talking, for example, in my past clubs, they were the contact between me and the club. Before I went, I wanted to talk with somebody in the club, either that was an assistant coach, a general director, someone. Because remember, if a club does want you, they want to have a conversation with the player. You
Mm.
never see you know, Mbappe signing to Real Madrid and he never talked with anybody from there, you know. So just an example, you
Yes,
know,
of
so you
course.
always, the player needs to always have um some conversation with somebody inside the club. And then
Mm.
of course, in regards for the fees and all this, that's through the agent, but there's
Yeah.
always some type of conversation. That's what happened with me in Portugal. Before I
Mm.
went to Portugal, when they wanted me, I had a call with the club, you know, and I was I was sure about it. I was calm, and I went there, and they had everything as planned. So always make sure that you could speak with somebody in the club, and then as well, the research is fundamental, because I had a lot of agents telling me go to this team because this is a high potential team. You go and research, and it's not what they say. So always make a
Mm,
research, and there's Google is amazing for it, because you can see their full matches on YouTube. You can see
mm,
their stadiums, more information about the club. So definitely you have to do your research,
mm,
because again, you're going to another country, you're going to a new place that you don't know, so of course you want to know where you're going.
mm, mm,
And then again, with agents, you have to be you always have to ask him questions. I know, so if a lot of them say you have to pay me or else I'll stop the conversations with the club, that's a red flag,
of
because an
course.
agent, their job is, their purpose more than job is to help young players find clubs, right? And then, of course, you build your relationships to move up the pyramid.
Mm,
But if an agent tells you, if you don't pay me, and they even go even low, if you don't pay me €250, I'll stop conversation. That's a red flag.
mm, mm.
So always make sure that you have direct contact with the club. And then if somebody does ask you for money for a trial, I I think that's a red flag as well, based on
Yeah,
my personal experience. Because
yeah,
if a club wants to see you
yeah.
and they can't provide accommodation for your child, that's fine, because not many clubs have that budget.
That's
But
right.
if you're already flying there, you're paying for an hotel, food, Uber, whatever it is, and they want you to pay a trial fee, then that's for me a red flag.
Yeah, and
Because based on
mm,
my experience, the clubs that wanted to see me, they did it.
mm,
They said,
mm,
enjoy, you come. Of course, maybe some clubs didn't have the budget for the flights or whatever, and some clubs do accommodate you.
mm.
But there's no trial fee if a club wants to see you.
That's right. And look, I 100% agree on that. You've experienced it. What I always recommend, if opportunities are presented to me as an agent for players, I make it absolutely mandatory to have Zoom meetings or Teams meetings or Skype or whatever it is, but face to face. So not just phone calls, just face to face. I think it's important to, if you're going to be speaking to an agent or a club, that you put a face to the name, because even via video link like we have, you can still get an understanding of what that person is like and what their values are. So if it's all done via email, you can't really gauge what their motives are, for example. So
Yeah.
a lot of examples that I've seen have been purely email. This is who I am.
Yeah.
This is what I do. There's an opportunity for a club. Wire me €3,000, and I'll let you know the next steps. Now, in this day and age, a lot of families are aware of, let's say, red flags like that. But even still, there are people, because it's an opportunity of a lifetime, people are prepared to say, well, okay, if it's going to cost me €3,000 or 4,000, whatever it is, to be exposed to a club, then I'll just do it for my son or daughter, because that's an opportunity that I want to give them. But there are steps to take to avoid falling into a pit
Always.
that you can't get out of financially. So and based on that, agents and scouts and clubs, in your experience, how do these opportunities come about? I know you and I have been working together for a few years. Obviously, we met during the pandemic, which was destructive for the football industry globally, and it's still having an effect, 1 or 2 years later. How do things happen? Like, I'm going to mention here about, having a CV, having a highlight reel, having a social media presence. What can young kids do to get their name exposed, so clubs and club scouts and agents can come across them to say, hey, I want to talk to this kid?
Yeah. So first of all, as we know, football is a business, and you're your own brand, and that's
Mm,
something that I feel that it's not talked about. When nobody knows about you, your name is not big. nobody knows about you. So
Mm.
there's players that they train 4 or 5 hours a day, every day, consistent. They probably even train more than Premier League players,
Yeah.
but nobody knows about that. Nobody knows about you. So what I always say is you have to market yourself always. You have to market your own brand, and that is an investment,
Mm.
because even when I started my career, I didn't have no connections. I have no mentors. My family didn't have connections. I had no connections. So I got on Google and I did it the old way. I
Mm.
searched up countries I was interested into going, search up agents, and you have to, have a professional highlight video and CV. That's a must.
Mm.
You always have to have a professional CV and a highlight video done. If you have to invest some money into it for an editor to make your highlight video or CV, or if you know somebody that can do it for you, do it. Because if you don't have those two things, why should someone even look at it? Because these
Mm.
people don't have time. They want to see clean highlight videos, clean CVs, so that's definitely important, but you do have to make time to market yourself.
Mm.
You have to email agents in the countries that you're interested in, because if you send 100 emails, out of the 100, one or two might answer, and then you start from there.
That's
You
right.
start, you
That's right.
start, you start. So
That.
that's why it takes hours, because a lot of players, by all means, they and I had to learn this the hard way too. They train hard every day. They have a good plan, their schedule, but they don't want to put effort to network themselves, and that takes hours. If I tell you the amount of hours I did at night before sleeping every night, just emailing, networking, trying to figure it out, who can help me in this country, who can help me in that, it takes hours, but it's important because you're in your own brand. Nobody knows about you, so that's what you have to do. So definitely that, but and you also have a clean social media. I'm not saying that your
Mm.
social media needs to be like professional with sponsorships, but just have a clean social media. If you can put a reel of you playing, a fun reel, creative reel, do it. Have your sports page, whatever it is, but as long as it's clean, have a clean the followers is not a problem. That's the last thing. It's just having a clean platform if they search your name, but definitely have a highlight video and CV done professionally. That's
Mm.
100%.
Yeah, you mentioned one thing which I thought is very critical. And you in particular are probably the exception to the rule, because I know how hard you train. I know how hard you work off the pitch and on the pitch, and how hard you work on the business side of things. Because again, as I said, you're an exception to the rule, because not many kids of your age get to do that at that level, right? But you mentioned one thing is that you started sending emails, and out of 100 emails, you might get one response if you're lucky. Because
Yeah,
remember, you and tens of thousands of other kids are doing the
of
same, right?
course.
So that's, I guess, one piece of advice to give to our audience is that just because you send out 200 emails doesn't mean you're going to get 200 responses. Sometimes
Correct.
you're going to send out 200 emails 10 times before you get
Yeah,
even one response. But it's about being persistent. It's about commitment. It's about having that discipline
correct.
to continue doing, because it's not going to be easy. Remember,
It's
like we
not
said,
easy.
football is a multi-billion dollar industry. The potential to making a lot of money is huge. And if somebody's going to allow you to come into that industry, then you need to show to them, you need to prove to them that not only can you play the game, but you're committed, you're disciplined in all aspects of the game. And I think that's important that young kids understand this, that just because your parents may have money, or it's going to cost this much to go into an academy, or to play at a club anywhere around the world, doesn't mean you're going to be there for a long time. You need to continue the effort. Yeah.
Yeah, and throughout the process, it might seem funny, but the process of networking and emailing, it builds some skills that you didn't even know that you had in yourself. I
Mm.
mean, years of networking, building my network in the football industry, like you said, emailing, it develops some skills I still use outside of the pitch. So every little detail in this journey helps you off the pitch in the future.
Mm.
So maybe when you're doing it at night, that you're tired, you're like, oh, I'm just wasting my time. In the long term, you'll see that those nights there helped you build skills in the business aspect and off the pitch. So every detail in this journey is very important. And I think you have to dedicate time into this because again, a young player, they see this with the social media, how the Premier League players live their day in lives, that they're not even doing this, so they're thinking, I'm just going to train and then somebody's going to knock on my door. Unfortunately, it's not like that, especially if you're starting with no connection. So that's why you have to do the dirty work. You have to do this, but again, there's also negatives of being in contact with many agents. And like you said, you're going to be in contact. If you send 100 emails, 4 or 5 might answer. Maybe those 4 and 5 are scam agents too. So you have to deal with that as well. It's not just like an agent answers you back and you're good to go. You have to also be with your knowledge. You have to know if it's a real agent or not. And I encountered thousands of agents that they were scams, and I have the experience now to kind of distinguish it, but I can imagine a 16-year-old that just starting their journey, how they can just fall in the trap, and that's why it just, for me, is heartbreaking just to see it, because you're playing with somebody's dream already. To have the courage to follow a dream of being a professional footballer, you just have to make it miserable for them and the families, so this is, again, it goes back that the federations, they need to put more attention into this. They need to do something about it, because it's not just about the World Cups and the Euros. Football is also about the youth, the local teams. These agents are scamming players. Like, that's football too, and they need to do something about it, because it's not okay, and it's just heartbreaking.
Well, and this is where you and I, having been in this partnership for now 5 years, that, you and I welcome questions from anyone that wants to get a bit more advice and insights outside of this podcast. We'll put some email addresses and some contact points at the end of this podcast. But with both our experiences, you as a player, me as an agent, we've both been exposed to clubs all around Europe. We can obviously help the young kids make the right choices, not necessarily we can give them opportunities, obviously, but we can help them make the right choices. In terms of just to quickly go over social media, for example, I know that a lot of teenagers are onto social media, whether it's Snapchat, TikTok, or Instagram, Facebook, to a lesser degree. I just want to hear your thoughts on the importance of being professional. If you're going to have your channel as young footballer, this is who I am, this is who I play for, just to be professional about what you post, remembering that anything you post is on the internet forever. Okay. And I think that clubs and scouts do a lot of is you might research scouts and clubs. The reverse happens as well. So if they see you as a good player, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to go to your social media account to say, what is this young kid talking about publicly? Yeah.
So in regards for the social media, as I always say, is you have to, act like a professional, even if you're not on a professional team, even on social media. A lot of these players, they go around saying that, they're professional soccer players or they're aspiring professional football players, but then they post that they're partying, alcohol, smoking. Like, I'm not saying that your social media needs to be all about soccer or health, but, of course, you always want to keep that in the back of your head. You have to act like one, even when you're not on a team, so even as a free agent, you always want to be careful. And this is not just for the clubs to see it, but this is also for your own good, because, if you tell your family that you want to be a professional football player or friends, and then you post about partying, alcohol, smoking, and they see that, what image is that on yourself, so it's not just about the clubs, but it's also for your own self, so I think that's something very important.
I think you're right on the money, and as in your position now as a current professional footballer, having been there since the age of 14, I think they're great insights and some great advice for the younger kids. So I guess we've spoken about the red flags to look out for, particularly because it's about the business of international football, and because football, as I said, is a multi-billion-dollar industry. The way I like to see it is that it's as if you're going for a job at a company. You need to have a CV. You need to have proof of what you've done in the past to qualify you for the job. But
Yeah.
there are also, particularly with football, other things that you need to do to give yourself the best opportunity possible. But in saying all that, understand that, like with any billion-trillion-dollar industry, there are the sharks that circle, and they're the ones that
Yeah.
you've got to really look out for, because, like you said before, Andrea, this could make or break a childhood dream if you get in bed with the wrong people. So, what are some final words of advice that you can give some young kids? If they don't get the opportunity to contact us direct, what are some words of advice that you can give to these young footballers as what they should look out for and how they should approach situations like that?
So starting my career, I mean, something that I wish somebody would have told me back in the day is, like you said, the sharks. I mean, since football has become even more of a business, you see that the people that work in clubs, so coaches, directors, agents, even players, they all think for their own self. They all think to save their job, and that's something that I just see every year. Even if it's a professional club, even if that person has a good CV, worked in the past with top clubs, they all think for themselves first,
Mm-hmm.
and just because, again, when there's more money into the business, money puts fear in people, so they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to take a risk on that young player. They want a player, if they see, for example, a player that has potential and doesn't have high CV, but he has potential, and then a player that's, he has a normal career, has decent stats, they're going to go for the stats, because the stats is what assures them, because they don't want to take that leap, that they don't want to take that, because they don't want to lose their jobs. They don't want to do, they don't want to be embarrassed or make the wrong decision, and then they get in a bad position. So I think that that's something you have to know before you're going into a club, is they think for themselves first, always. At least this is my opinion and what I
No,
saw.
no. In fact, I agree with you 100%. But what that makes me think of is they think for themselves because they don't want to lose their job, but also the importance of networking, and whoever you're exposed to in the industry, don't burn bridges, essentially.
Oh, always.
Because
And yeah, sorry, continue, Nick.
no, I was going to say, because one day you might come across them. They've gone from a fifth division club and then they're now working at a first division club. And the last thing you want is to have any bad blood out in the industry, because, again, remembering that some decisions are made and some footballers are given opportunities where they shouldn't be given the opportunity. They're not great footballers, but they just happen to, whether it's know someone or, if they've paid more money or whatever it is. So keep the network clean,
Always.
and make sure you always connect yourself with clean people, with people that have your best interests at heart. Yeah.
Always. And there are people in the industry, that what they want to change. And I think that's a great point that you said, because even if you do encounter these sharks right in front of you and you just see some crazy things that you're just like, wow, that this is not okay, you always want to keep a calm. You never want to fight back, because I know from what I saw with my own eyes, teammates or people that I know, that they fought back, they got in a fight, or they got in arguments. Then you put a wall into that, and it's just not good. So always always have your chin up, chest out. And like we said in the past podcast, that you want to be clean. If you see something bad, don't overreact. You want to control your emotions, because I think that's something very important.
Also, be professional, be respectful,
Always.
understand that everyone's journey is different.
Exactly.
Not everyone comes from money. A lot of people come from poverty. But, again, don't burn bridges along your journey, because, like I said, you can come across somebody in the football community that can make your dream into a reality. But if you've burnt bridges, if you've been arrogant, if you've shown people that you know better than they do,
No.
then it's not going to look good on you as a person. And keep your values strong.
Always.
Before we close, I want to quickly again talk about connecting with the right people in terms of agents, first and foremost, because a lot of times young players won't get the opportunity to talk to clubs direct. So connect yourself with people that, once you've done your research, they are good people. And that's what it comes down to. Even though the business of football is surrounded by sharks, there are still good people out there that have your best interests at heart. And the other important thing is that if you're ever approached by anyone to get something in writing and to get others to look at that, independent people to look at that, to make sure that they are legitimate contracts, they are legitimate letters of offer, they are legitimate clubs, and even pick up the phone and call the club and say, I've received this from this person. Is there an opportunity? There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, and for the contracts, when you do have an official contract in front of you, what I always say is, based on also my experience, is you have to look at the small details. Those small details is what makes the difference in a contract, because you have the general clauses, which is in every contract, but then those small details is what you need to pay attention to. And that's something that I learned as well, is the small details, because you never know what happens. Something might happen. We never know. So remember, football is always a business. Even if the club wants you and they're happy with you, it's always that business mentality is always behind the back of their heads.
That's
so you always want to make sure that those small details, with whatever you agreed on, is stated, because that's something very important. And then lastly, I just want to say that even if an agent, because in my past career I had many agents telling me that I can't reach at this level, it's impossible, and they say direct. And you know what it is you have to respect it. Everybody has its own opinions, and you have to respect it. It's not that every opinion that you receive is always positive. You have to respect even the people that they think that you might not make it, you can't play at that level. You just have to respect it. It's a part of the game. It's like us being fans of football. How many times that we say that player is not he can't play at Manchester City. He can't do this. It's just a part of the game. So you always have to respect opinions of others, good or bad, and the respect is what makes you what grows you as a person, having that respect and able to take in good or bad, so that's something very important.
That's great. Great advice, Andrea. I hope the people that watch this podcast have got something out of it. And like I said, you'll see some contact details at the bottom of this screen in case you want to reach out and ask questions or make contact with either myself or Andrea. If there are any clubs or coaches or scouts out there that want to collaborate on this podcast, we welcome the opportunity. So as we come to a close, obviously understanding the business side of football not only helps you make informed decisions, but it also empowers you to take control of your career from the very start. So success in football, as you know, Andrea, requires more than just skill with the ball at your feet. It requires a keen mind and a strategic approach to every aspect. And remember, knowledge is power. And in a world as fast-paced as competitive professional football, being well-informed can be the difference between a fleeting career and long-term success. So stay tuned, stay focused, and above all, remember that the game is more than just what happens on the pitch. See you next time.